Hi there, and welcome along to another episode of A Serve of Leadership. My name is Ian Crawford, professional speaker, coach, and trainer in the area of leadership and influence. Joining me once again is Ash Dashludi, leadership coach and consultant extraordinaire. Welcome back, Ash. How you been?
Course, mate. I tell you what, your intros are getting even more passionate and energetic each week. I'm so looking forward to episode 100 because I think you will explode in your introduction.
Well, or it could be, "G'day, Ash," and that's how it starts.
I've lost the will to live.
Yes, this is yours. You can have all three tips today, Ash. I just don't want to speak anymore.
Mate, what's been going on in your week this week?
Not much this week. It's well, the phone has started ringing again, which is all good for the bank account type thing. We're slowly coming out of this thing and people are having conversations again. How about yours?
Mate, busy. Yeah, flat stick this week.
Good.
Flat stick, yeah. Having
Good.
putting some fun stuff together for a couple of clients. And like you said, the phone's been sort of ringing through again as people are looking to, set themselves up for the next kind of 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, bravo. Good work. So where are we going today? What are we going to talk about?
Hey, well, after I think the last couple of weeks, you and I have both picked topics of things that we've been a bit interested in. So this time we thought we'd better throw it out to a listener and a viewer and see what they are actually asking. Because we'll keep asking at the end of each week, hey, what do you reckon we should talk about? So we should really follow up on that. So this week's topic comes from Steve from Auckland. So shout out to Steve from Auckland. Thanks very much for actually spending your time and listening to our world and our jibber jabber, I think the word is called sometimes.
Yeah.
And Steve actually asked for a really interesting one. He is looking for some general tips or ideas around motivating teams, which is a good one, hey? And of course, first thing that springs to mind is what was his name? Tom Cruise, show me the money. Surely motivating is all about dollars, right, Crawf? It's all about the dollars?
Both of us have these sort of conversations quite regularly in the workshops and the training that we deliver, and you in your coaching. People always go, "It's money, pay us more money, and we'll be motivated." Let's get this out of the way to start off with. It's not true.
Oh, what?
There was a really great study done a while ago by Gallup, which you straight away know is a decent chunk of work if Gallup has done it, where they interviewed 1.4 million employees.
Oh, is that all?
192 organizations, 49 industries, and 34 nations. So
pretty small sample set, you're saying?
Well, I think they've done pretty well in this one. And they found that there was no significant difference in regards to an employee's pay level and their engagement level, which is really interesting. Now,
they look at different levels of pay?
Yeah. So they looked at all the way up to CEO, all the way down to entry level, and they found no greater motivation or greater engagement in the workplace. Although other research adds something to it, which gives a little bit more depth, is as long as the pay covers basic needs.
Yeah, right.
Delta. So if I'm paying you 10 grand to work full time and you can't cover, you feed your kids and all that, suddenly it becomes a very strong motivator. It's important. So there is a balance there.
Now, so it's kind of, you need it at a level to take it off the table, basically.
There it is. Perfect.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right.
When we ask these questions in the workshop, it always comes up. And I understand why, because of all the things that we'll talk about, plus the list of other things we aren't going to talk about, money is the only tangible one that we get to talk about. We can hold it, we can fold it, we can swipe it, we can play with it. So I understand why people go to it. The research and our experience also indicates the motivation around money isn't great at all. We've got the elephant out of the room. Give me a tip about how do we motivate teams the Ash way.
So I think number one for me is really tapping into being mission driven as a team and as an organization, right? And it's that idea of cycling into something bigger, obviously, than what we are, and that we're striving towards something. And where I've seen that work really well, actually, and I'm going to do a little shout to this coffee company that I've done a little bit of work with, but also have a bit of a special place in my heart for, because I do enjoy a very good cup of coffee and will be willing to pay for it. There's a coffee based out of Melbourne in Australia, but they also do have other places around. So they've got a roastery and stores in Portland, Oregon in the US as well. And These guys are deeply mission driven. And I won't go into the detail of the mission, but basically it boils down to this, that if they can improve people's awareness and understanding of coffee and experience around enjoying coffee, they will use that to then improve the outcomes of the families and communities who grow coffee. And so they have these really powerful setups where they have these direct connections to the growers and the producers, amazing relationships with them. But when you look at their teams, the amount of discretionary effort and the passion that they all have for the work they do is genuinely palpable, right? You can actually almost feel it when you walk into either one of their cafes or chat to any of the staff who in any parts of the business. So for me, my number one tip is be clear about the mission and what you're striving towards. What do you reckon?
I totally agree. And the interesting thing is that we have a lot of organisations that we work with talking about mission and mission statements. And do you think many organisations almost do lip service to their mission?
Well, and that's the challenge, right? Is that it can't be words on a page. You've got to live it. Absolutely. You've got to live it. And it is friggin' hard work. It is absolutely hard work. And you do have to live it. Do I see many of them? Not necessarily.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to see people drift off track. Right? What about you when you're out and about?
Yeah, I think those more traditional organisations that we work with that have been around for a long time, they understand the importance of it. I don't think they really get how to develop one and then actually use it. Some of these modern ones, and I encourage people to check these out, things like Google, Uber, Asana, and those sort of organisations have some really powerful missions that they really hold on to, and it really drives business. And we can see the impact of that by the almost zealot commitment to these organisations that their people have. And it's a really great thing to see. My first tip is actually relates very directly to that, but probably chunking down a little bit as well. What I found from an experience point of view, and it's really highlighted it during this isolation, working virtually type time, is clarity. And what I mean by that is leaders setting clarity for their team in two different areas. Number one is ensuring that their team really understands what their work is and what success looks like. That just allows them to make good decisions about their work from an individual point of view. And the second one is, and this is a really big one that's not done very well, is how to prioritize their work. In this day and age, leaders are throwing work at people at different levels. Or the one that I see is, supervisor comes in and goes, "Hey, Ash, you need to do some work." Suddenly the superintendent or manager comes into you as well and goes, "Hey, I need this work done as well." The ability to know what success looks like and how to prioritize work, and therefore having boundaries and a decision-making process for people ultimately empowers them, is a really powerful strategy to have. And the reason I'm so passionate about this is because I've seen the effect of the opposite, of not having clarity about what success looks like. It just confuses people. They spend too much time on it. They then deliver the work. It's not to the level that the leader wants. Therefore, the leader pushes it back, which demoralizes them. And secondly, people are just overwhelmed and they have no idea how to make decisions around what work they should do first and what they should do last. And linking back to what you said, if we had real clarity around mission, they could make their own decisions around priorities.
Yeah.
The leaders need to assist people with making those decisions, and also having that mission that allows people to make judgment on is a really powerful one as well.
So that clarity piece, like you say, sits across multiple levels, right? So there is, once you deeply embed the mission, then you end up with more, I guess, scope around how you approach particular things. But also, if you then have clarity over where that sits strategically, for argument's sake, so what strategic direction are we driving in? Again, that allows you more freedom or understanding to be able to do your job well. As well as you're saying, breaking that clarity down to an individual expectation as well.
Yeah. So big picture all the way down to day-to-day operational stuff.
Yeah, right. Okay, what's your second one then?
No, that's you. It's how it works. I go, then you go. All right.
God, how about we just, mix it up every now and then?
Yeah.
Mate, okay, so tip number two. Tip number two for me is don't underestimate the power of empowerment. Right? And I think this probably extends off what you were talking about in terms of that use of clarity. In that, having a chat with the manager today, he provided me a wonderful example. He said, look, in these times of crisis that people are working through, he said the command and control is really highlighting that you have stifled the thinking of the people that you're leading. So they kind of just wait for direction around how to deal with things, we approach things and that sort of, and how we are going to respond to it. Whereas if you extend from the clarity that you were talking about, but actually create that environment where people have a real empowerment or autonomy over what they do and deciding and having involvement in that process, then you're actually encouraging the thinking to take place. You're actually encouraging them to come up with ideas. You're actually giving them ownership over what's going on. So finding ways to look at how you can create that level of empowerment. Or I remember doing some reviewing of Daniel Pink's book from a while ago, and he uses the term autonomy, right, of how people become very motivated when they have control over things in particular that impact them, right? And that they, that level of control and sense of control allows them to buy into a lot more of what's going on. So finding ways to empower people, I think, is a really important tip or piece from my side. How does that fit with your thinking?
I totally agree. And I must admit that, again, when delivering workshops, that I get quite a bit of pushback from frontline leaders who, when you have that conversation that you just had with us and take it back to the workplace, the frontline leaders get really quite nervous about, because autonomy equals letting go to a certain degree. They get really nervous about that. I've had a couple of leaders who have just gone completely against how they feel about this and tried it, and the responses have just been, because I truly believe people want to come to work and do a good job. And the way they want to do a good job is giving them the ability to make decisions about how they do that.
Yeah.
And I think it works time and time again.
I had a conversation with a supervisor at BHP just recently, actually. And we were having a bit of a chat around a program that we're looking to roll out. And I always love to ask people, I said, so tell me the best leader that you've worked with. And he actually said to me, well, it's my current manager.
Wow. Good.
Yeah, I know. And I said, okay, well, so tell me then, what is it about him that gives you this response? And I think mapping back to what we're talking about here, he said, well, he gives me the rope to be able to hang myself. I said, oh, what do you mean by that? He said, well, he allows me to take charge over projects, decisions, things like that. Completely has my back if things go wrong, but will give me the scope or empower me to be able to go and make decisions and to go and, like you say, everyone generally has the best intentions for the business, right? So you give them the opportunity to do that. Interesting language he chose to use, but the concept was brilliant.
Although it's quite mining sort of language though, isn't it?
Oh, come on now. Don't be, you're so harsh on them. You're so harsh.
No, hey, they're my guys and girls. I like them, but that's the language they use. That autonomy, it comes around making choices. And I stumbled across a nice little bit of research of 20,000 workers. Quite relevant,
Small now.
Compared to Gallup.
Compared to Gallup, sure.
Yeah. And they basically looked at what impacts or try to figure out what motivates people, including how much working from home versus working in the office plays in the equation of motivation, which is quite relevant at the moment. What they found was that the total motivation of people who work at home was actually lower than the people that work in the office, and which is really quite interesting. Here's the really interesting thing. If we added into the equation where people had no choice in regards to where they need to work, you've been told you need to work here or you're told to work here, the differences between motivation is significant, ginormous. And they actually said enormous in the research study.
Gee, I really hope they use ginormous.
Ginormous. That was a cross language more than anything. So much so when they didn't have a choice about where they could work, total motivation dropped so dramatically. It was the equivalent of someone moving from a really great culture to the worst culture.
Yeah, right.
So that's something we're going to have to be careful of as we move forward, because trust me, if I ask the people I've been speaking to in this format around Australia and around the world, a lot of people are going, let's stay home. It's great. But I think that's more of a novelty thing now than what would be best for the business moving forward. We need to allow people to make choices, and it has to be a balance rather than you must work here or you must work there, or you just get to work at either one end of the continuums. So I thought that was interesting.
Well, it loops back to what we were talking about a little while ago, a few episodes ago, when we sort of, it's that one size fits one, right? So being able to allow people that option that is aligned with best for business, but also best for individual, is when you're going to get best outcomes, I would have thought.
And that really drives us to that leadership approach of, hey, let's lead outcomes, not process. So let's judge people based on what they achieve rather than where they do it from, how long they spend. Obviously, we set boundaries. They don't get to just run wild. Right, your turn again.
Oh, God, it feels like it keeps looping back very quickly. My final thought around my final thought
and covering in.
Oh, come on now. My final thought is being what I call developmentally driven.
Okay.
And people love to learn. So yes, they love to achieve, but they also love to learn. And in fact, if you're not continuously learning, understanding new things, developing new ways, trying new things, even those people who are consistent and stable and like to do things almost kind of the same way each time and like the routines, they still also themselves enjoy learning. And I think what we notice is that people's motivation definitely tends to drop away as they become bored, right? So if the opportunity not to become better at something, learn something new, find different ways to do it, embed different technologies, be involved in different projects, we become stale. So I think being developmentally driven is a really critical ingredient.
And it's really interesting you should say that, because that's one of the reasons we do this is for other people's development, but definitely it really assists us in our development as well. My final one is a little bit different to what you've just been saying. Is one of the different. Well, I try. One of the strongest ways to increase motivation and therefore work performance is play. Play. Now, before you start thinking about bowling alleys and video games and cushions and all that sort of ping pong tables in the workplace, what the researchers referred to, play was referring to the ability to be in the same room with your colleagues doing a problem-solving activity around the business, where everyone in the team gets a decision and they work together. So what they're referring to, play equals the opportunity for people to collaborate, strange enough, with other people in the same place, is a very, very powerful motivator for people. And the thing that we have to be very careful of is this is one of the strategies that could quite easily disappear because of these remote working strategies that we're implementing at the moment. So we'd have to be either we find strategies that we can do it virtually because that's what we need to do, or secondly, we find that balance, because gathering together in a room is more than just solving problems. It's about being with people, seeing, looking them in the eye, etc., etc. So there's a real ripple effect of bringing people together, and people love it. No matter what they say, the research shows quite strongly that being together is a very powerful motivator, which I think is great.
Right.
And sorry, let me add that. You would also see it in your training as well, is that when we put activities where we set a task, that even if it's really simple or very childlike, you can see the motivation just lift. Yeah, and some of the stuff we do is, if you step back and look at it, it's pretty silly. It's always got a reason. I'm constantly amazed. People being paid significant amounts of money to do significant, important work, given a task where they get to work together for a common good. The energy just lifts, the motivation just lifts. So that translates really nicely back to work.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm sorry to interrupt you there as well.
No, look, all I was going to say is having fun is actually a critical ingredient for me in any of the sessions that I run. Is if we're all going to spend a day together and really put ourselves in challenging, courageous, compromising situations, we're going to have some fun along the way. And purely is because I know that people learn better in that moment. Their minds open up, they enjoy themselves more, and we're actually taking more away from it in that piece. So that research certainly aligns for me. in that piece. It's something that I live every day.
And
Although
I've
my
seen-
wife tells me that I'm not that playful, I'm not that funny. So, you know.
I would suggest the kids the same thing. If
Yeah,
they're
they
not
don't
doing it
even,
now,
they don't try and sugarcoat it. They just really spit it back in my
Dad,
face.
you're not funny.
Yeah.
Hey, if you ain't seen nothing yet, wait till they're teenagers. So both putting ourselves down and knowing that we're not funny to our children and the people around us, I'm going to say farewell. Ash and I will be back next week where we'll grab another topic and discuss it in depth. If you missed out on previous sessions, please look at the link below, which will take you to our YouTube channel and our playlists where you can get all the episodes that have come so far. So I'm going to say, I almost forgot the important part. If you have a topic or a question that you'd like us to address, please use the contact details for Ash and I below, and we'd be very happy to respond to that. No problems whatsoever. Just like Steve from Auckland.
Auckland. Good work, Stevie. Steve.
I'm just Steve, or Steve-O. I think it's Australian way.
That would be if he was in Australia.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you, Ash.
Mate, thank you, Corfs. Good to chat as always.
And we look forward to seeing all of you next week.